I'm Craig McMichael. I'd like to start by thanking all of you for coming out tonight. I joined this race in January of 2013 because I understood the simple fact that Kevin Brady no longer represented the Constitution or the people of Congressional District 8. Last race, I got 32% of the vote. It was successful enough to encourage other people to join the race. I view that as a godsend. God works in mysterious ways, and I think between the three fine men you have sitting up here, we finally have a chance to beat the powerhouse and the money that is Kevin Brady and restore some sort of constitution to our district again. Somebody who would actually fight for the people, for the country, and for the government. Kevin will talk about 50 town halls a year, but he'll never come debate when it matters, when people are here, and will hold his feet to the fire. He talks about defunding Planned Parenthood, but he passes an omnibus bill that funds Planned Parenthood. He talks about supporting the troops, but he lays massive debts on our government, and everybody knows when the $18 trillion debt gets too big, we'll no longer be able to fund our military and support our troops. Each one of us, at some point, have to decide that we're the power in this country, and we have to stand together and make a difference. We're the ones that control Washington, D.C. They are not our masters. They are not our dictators. Our Constitution, where freedom's handed to us by God, and they're protected. That's why we're a constitutional republic. They cannot be dictated by Washington to make us sacrifice what we know to be true in our hearts. And if we stand together, we can finally elect people that have the courage to do the right thing in Washington, D.C. As you listen to our questions tonight, if you don't like what I'm saying, that's fine. You have two other choices. But the motto for this campaign should be anybody but Kevin Brady. It is time to show these people that even if you're the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, you are not more powerful than the people of this country, and we will retire you and send you home. God bless you and thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Colonel Dean. My first name is Andre, and my wife is in the back. Diane, where'd you go? So Diane's back there, and Diane's in the front row. And Thomas, raise your hand. My youngest son is here tonight, so good to have Thomas. He's not sure about these campaign things, but he said he'd give it a shot tonight, as long as he had some ice cream when it was over, I think. So, you know, a lot of what we do in politics is not about us. I hope for most of you, when you choose someone to represent you, you're not finding somebody selfish who has a personal agenda of a grandiose feathered nest and some visions of greatness. But something about our children, or our grandchildren, and our neighbors' grandchildren. It's the better life we're leaving behind, and whether we keep the American dream alive or we watch it extinguish and go out without a puff in the night. And there are a lot of us who are angry about the direction of this nation. In fact, I think the whole nation is angry about this. And I echo Craig's opening comments tonight. You know this? God has placed on all three of our hearts, I believe, right now. I think I know my two fellow campaigners up here, candidates, very well right now, but on our hearts to make a difference and to raise a voice. And we are, the three of us, unified at least at one level, and that is to give you a conservative, answerable government that is not Kevin Brady. You know, Kevin's a nice guy. I ran against him 17 years ago when I had a break in military service. And he's a nice enough guy, but if you're looking at the $14 trillion of debt that he has added, and of course he's here to defend himself tonight like he always is, Kevin doesn't show up. And he came last Thursday night, he called in and spoke for 2 minutes and 33 seconds. Really? And he was awkward when he did it, because he was like, I know you're all mad at me, and this is really, you know, because I'm doing the right thing for the nation. It's an embarrassment of what we have, but it's very hard to unseat an incumbent, as we know. But there are three of us in the fight. You have three warriors up here, a 10-year Marine, a 27-year Army combat veteran, and Steve, who's fought the trenches already in Austin, Texas. So whatever one of the three of us, if we can take Kevin with your full support, that's your funding, when you find any one of the three of us and you support us financially, you go walk the block for us, you go tell your neighbors about us, you get literature from us and pass it out. One of the three of us takes Kevin into a special runoff election with our name recognition pushing out there across this entire community. You get McMichael or Andre Dean or Steve Toth's name recognition. People have a choice besides Kevin Brady. They will choose besides Kevin Brady. We will go into a special runoff. One of the three of us will beat him in that special runoff, which will be a great win for the 8th Congressional District. It's an honor to be here. I'm grateful to be a candidate. I'm grateful to live in a land where freedom still rules. I'm 27-year Army combat veteran. I'm a fighting Texas Aggie, class of 1986. I'm a fighting Longhorn with a hook 'em horn, which is hard for an Aggie to do, which I did my master's degree in public policy. I'm a grandpa with 3 grandsons. I care profoundly and deeply about this nation. I am a Christian who loves God and believe He gave us this sacred gift of the Constitution and this land if we can keep it. We're in the fight to keep it. Again, my name is Colonel Dean. I would love to have your vote. Thank you.
I'm Steve Toth. I'm Steve Toth, and I'm honored to be up here with Craig and Andre. These are good men, and I don't know that I've ever seen or been a part of a campaign where there's this kind of camaraderie and common purpose, a good purpose, a purpose that's really truly noble. Kevin Brady is a really nice guy. And I think we'd all agree on that, but the qualification for serving and defending the Constitution requires so much more than that. Our founding fathers understood that the Constitution and our liberty would be under fire. And it requires fighters. It has always required fighters. From the inception of this country, it has required fighters. There's never been a greater difference between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. 20 years ago, if you called a Democrat a socialist, they would be mad at you. They would be angry at you. It was a pejorative. For Democrats, that means it's a bad thing. Sorry. Today, they wear the label with pride. Today, Bernie Sanders could, for all intents and purposes, be the nomination of the Democrat Party, an avowed, self-avowed, professed socialist. He could be the president if the Republican challenger stumbles. Can you imagine 8 more years of a white flag Congress that will not fight this administration and says, oh, we don't want to be accused by the press of shutting the government down? In 1994, we took control of the House and the Senate. And for some reason, Bill Clinton just didn't get the memo. And Newt Gingrich brought out the contract with America. And Clinton still didn't get the message. And in 1995, there was a shutdown. In 1996, there was a shutdown. And you know what? During those shutdowns, the military still got paid, unlike what Kevin Brady is telling people. And you know what? Social Security checks still went out. He's frightening our elderly and hiding behind them with his votes. The government still went on. Only non-essential personnel did not get paid. And you know what it led to? It led to a budget compromise in 1997, a balanced budget in 1998, and a surplus, an actual surplus in 2000. Is that good for America? Or is it good for America that we keep giving more and more debt to our children? We need a fighter that's going to go to Washington, stick up for us, stand up for us, and fight for us. Thank you very much.
And as soon as our first questioner is done, if David Burka would like to be ready for the next question. 1 minute, please.
Okay. Gotcha.
Thank you. I'm very sorry.
We can hear you. It's loud.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me back there? Thank you. I was so glad to hear all 3 of you mention the debt, because I've watched probably 90% of the Republican debate on TV. I even watched some of the Democratic debate on TV, and I heard one Republican mention the $1 trillion of debt we're in. That was Rand Paul. And he's not even in the debate tonight. So it upsets me. I think that's the biggest challenge facing us. So I was really glad that all 3 of you mentioned the debt. The next question is, kind of feeding on that, is what do you think about the Republican leadership not tackling this issue? You mentioned Kevin Brady in Congress not doing anything about it, but what about the other ones? And if you get elected, what are the first couple of things you're going to do to try to help attack this issue, which I think is the most critical issue we're facing today? Thank you.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. McMichael. Next time we'll start with Colonel Dean. We'll alternate who gets to start, but all 3 of you get to respond to the question. 2 minutes, please.
Okay. Yeah, so debt's been a problem for a long time. It has raised exponentially under Kevin Brady. The problem in Washington, D.C. is there's no leadership. if you watch what Kevin has done and the rest of them in DC, is they're more concerned about their own power, gaining a seat in Washington, becoming part of the system, the go along to get along, and part of that is raising debt. To them, America will always work its way out of it. I think what you have to do is elect somebody that's willing to stand up in a room full of people that hate them and say no. You'll never change Washington, D.C. until the people in this country accept that we have the power. One of 435 congressmen, you can say no and you can try to build a coalition of like-minded individuals, but if you can get a news story going where people are actually upset about their government, if you look historically, I'll use a quick example, the 18th Amendment passed prohibition. It got changed by the 21st Amendment because of the people. It was a constitutional convention that almost went through and put the 21st Amendment down. The people of this country have the power, and until we recognize that and stand together and demand results from our politicians, our congressmen, our president, or whoever it may be, nothing will ever change.
So if you pull out my brochure or pamphlet you've got, you'll see the very opening bullet under my issues page. The very top one is wage war against our $18 trillion debt. It was $18 trillion when I printed this thing 6 months ago. Now we're at just shy of $19 trillion, depending on whose numbers we're using. And I've got my little warrior guy there holding the Texas flag at war, because I think we have reached a point where the national debt has become a co-equal national security issue of such magnitude right now that we're on the border of becoming a Greece or a Portugal or a Spain, where we start to devalue and collapse our currency. There's only so much debt, and we don't know where that number is, but we know we're very close to it. And so when you look at our national security, from the point of view of a guy who spent 27 years in the military, ISIS is a threat, and I'm deeply concerned about them, but they're part of the package of threat right now. So when you look at our national security threat, I take the national debt and put it right in the middle of it. It's ISIS trying to kill Americans and the president doing nothing about it. And in the middle of all that, this debt that's being spent out the wazoo, he doesn't care. You know, it's how much debt can I put our country in until he cripples us. I go into Vice President Dick Cheney's words, this president has done more to damage this nation than any president willfully in American history. And then Newt Gingrich, Speaker of the House from not too many years ago, stood up and said the same thing just about a month ago. When the president wants to destroy a nation, he piles on the debt, and he piles on our enemies in the world. So we have an ISIS threat trying to kill us, and we have a national debt at the same time trying to harm this nation. So at the same time, we have these open borders, and you have the refugee situation right now, which there's a pattern of neglect for the nation, and right in the middle of it is a national debt that I think the Democrats, and many on their side, not all of them, because there's always a few exceptions, but many, and then our Republican leadership, which is a failed leadership, because we just saw with Speaker Boehner and Kevin Brady, who is his deputy, having to exit stage right because they don't grasp it. They don't understand the American pulse out here. They don't see why we're so furious about spending our children's inheritance as if it's okay. So, absolutely, the national debt is a national security crisis.
I'm going to give you a little example of what I would do. In 2013, we had a curriculum, a road curriculum that was in 80% of the schools across the state of Texas. It was called C-SCOPE, affecting 43% of the children. It taught Common Core. Ginger Russell really deserves, she and her mom deserve most of the credit for bringing awareness to the issue. But it was one of those issues I was told to leave alone. The state of Texas, the biggest check that they write is to education. And if you get in the way of these lobbyists and special interest group that have all this money tied up in this thing, they will come after you with a vengeance. There are 150 members of the Texas House. Why do you think no one's touched it, Steve? And I didn't listen. As a dad, I couldn't go along to get along. It made me nuts. And what I did was I started working really hard at educating parents across the state of Texas about what was in it. And when parents got involved and engaged, they stood up and fought it. Having a representative in Washington lie to us about this omnibus bill, we will never get anywhere with any of the debt situation if we continue to lie to the American people about what's going on. If we tell people that their Social Security checks will not go out unless we fund this, if we tell people that we're not going to be able to pay the Chinese the debt we owe them, the interest payments we owe them if we don't fund this, that's a lie. It's a bold-faced lie. The only people that don't get paid during a shutdown are not essential personnel. I'm going to go there and speak the truth about what really happens so that you guys get engaged, get involved, and start fighting for it. We've got to start fighting for the next generation.
Thank you very much.
1 minute, please.
Speaker John Baker, or Boehner, excuse me. He's almost forgotten. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get him to rescind or sign away 90% of his pensions perhaps, and his benefits? Wouldn't that be a nice thing to do? Wouldn't it also be a nice thing for some of our other current congressional individuals, congresspeople, to give half of theirs back? Earned them, yes, but we've rolled up a giant debt. So one of our remaining candidates could take for us something of this nature to let government pay its fair share and give back to that pot that they've been taking from the American people. If we remember, we are supposed to have representatives of us in Congress, but we have, as you pointed out correctly, a big centralized government representative to us.
Okay, thank you. Colonel Dean, would you like to
Is there a
start?
question?
John Boehner.
Are you willing to get back?
John Boehner's rescinding 90% of his pension, perhaps pension and benefits. He can live on 10%, he can make
Thank you.
$10 million.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I've got the gist of it, because I think we're all, there's some anger from all of us. When you have 30-year, 40-year, and, oh my goodness, Ron Thurman, 90, 70 years. Yeah, and you take that pension that rolls out of that piece, and it becomes a massive amount of money. There's bitterness, there's anger. That was never supposed to be that way in American government. We're not supposed to have these 1 million plus budgeted, all congressmen who now average $1.1 million is their net worth right now. How did that happen? It graft and the human nature and the ugly side of us, but the piece that we can do, I think trying to go back and take away what somebody was granted at the time that they were under the grandfather system, that we just don't do that very well in America. What we do well is fix it for the future. And so I'm not interested in going back and saying, Boehner, give back up $20,000 a year. I don't think those are very fruitful discussions. I don't think we can win that fight. But what we can win is the battle for term limits. And that's what Governor Abbott's calling for right now when he's talking about his Article 5 convention right now. He's talking, we need to fix some problems, and one of them is we can rewrite the term limits piece, just like we did in the 22nd Amendment for the President of the United States. That's overdue. So how do we fix a problem like that? We fix it for the future. I think you'll find on most issues, when you get us, all three of us, you'll find very little difference on policy and substance on what most of the three of us value. What you're looking for, maybe between the three of us, is just something that identifies you a little more powerfully with you. But you'll find term limits is a huge, if you're looking at my stuff again, you're going to see on my 7th bullet down, impose term limits. And I have down 12 years for the House and 12 years for the Senate and 18 years for our federal judges and lifetime appointees on the Supreme Court. Because I think we've got to get some term limits in place. And we can make it a 29th Amendment and we can pass it. There's a lot of support across the nation. Democrats support, 64% of Democrats support term limits. 83% of Republicans, this is a 2013 Gallup poll, support term limits. It doesn't have to be 12 years, it can be 6. If you fix that part, what you'll get is you serve 6 years and you're out and you have no pension at all. You serve your country, people thank you for your service, out the door, and the next person come in to serve when we have representative government. That's a great answer. I am fighting for term limits for exactly that reason.
So, my only concern is it would be a show vote, and I'll tell you why. A small amount of money that these guys get, the smallest percentage of what these guys get when they walk away from the job is their pension. Where they're socking us is they take all this campaign donation and they turn that into a personal income. That goes into a foundation, and then the foundation pays them. It is criminal. They would probably love a little show vote like that. And I'll give you a perfect example of a show vote. Just a few weeks ago, they funded Obamacare, right? Well, Kevin Brady said, give us the House, and we'll fund Obamacare. We'll defund Obamacare. Then he said, whoa, we need the Senate too. So we gave him the Senate. Not only did we give them the Senate, they had the biggest majority since World War II. And now it's, well, we really can't fund Obamacare until you give us the White House. You know how you defund Obamacare? You don't fund it. They funded it 5 weeks ago. And now they're doing a show vote that they know that the President of the United States is going to veto. This would be another show vote. Meanwhile, they rake in millions from their campaign coffers that they turn into foundations that pay them later on. That's what we have to go after.
I think one of the founders, if you study historically the Constitution, they envisioned a republic where citizens stood up and served their government. It's an honor and a privilege, not only to run for these offices, but to get elected and go serve in Washington, D.C. I'm a big believer in term limits. I'm a fan of 6 years for Congress, 12 for the Senate. I don't think there should be any pension when you're done. You get paid enough money while you're there. You should have a trade that you can go back and do. Your trade should not be politician. That should not be a job title inside this country. And what's funny, our opponent, who, I've been to a few of these, he hasn't come yet. Our opponent, when he first ran, promised to not serve more than 8 years in Congress because he believed in term limits. And apparently the only time he term limits himself is when it's an actual congressional debate to explain his stances for the office that he wants to maintain.
Okay, the questions are coming from the names put in this bowl. If you come up with a question you want to ask, if you'll go back, put your name on one of the tickets, they'll bring it up and we'll put it in here. So you're not excluded just because you didn't put one in at the beginning. But the next
You're not
one,
allowed to pass anymore.
next question will be John Wirtz. And then after John, if Mary Brown can have her question ready. John, 1 minute.
Can you hear me? What form of federal tax structure would you guys advocate, whether it's current, fair tax, or flat tax?
I would support the fair tax under one condition, that is it's done by a constitutional amendment that eliminates the IRS and eliminates the income tax. The only way I ever want to see, again, the fair tax is if you've constitutionally eliminated the payroll deductions. If we give them one more tax in addition to the income tax, they'll kill us. Right? And so in the absence of being able to do that, if we can't do that, I support Cruz's idea of a flat tax at 10%. Right now, there are $2 to $3 trillion that are overseas. And the reason why it's overseas is because corporations, the United States has the highest corporate tax rate in the Western world. I don't know if you knew that. And if we just lowered it so that it's commensurate with other countries, we'd have $2 to $3 trillion of money come back here. And we'd start seeing a resurgence of economic growth and manufacturing right here in our own country. These things, iPhones, they start making them here again. The tax rate level is just too high to do it any other way. We need a flat tax or a fair tax.
Mr. McMichael, care to address it?
Yeah, I've always been a fan of the fair tax. I argue with everybody all the time. I believe the income tax is a violation of your constitutional rights. The Fourth Amendment states that you should be secure in your private property against a legal search and seizure without a written warrant signed by a judge. When the federal government seizes your income before you receive it, they're seizing your property without a warrant. They're violating your constitutional rights. The income tax was never supposed to be imposed. It's a violation of your God-given rights to be free as a citizen of this country. The current fair tax bill as it stands on the floor of the House has a sunset clause that requires the IRS to be removed within 7 years. That's why I support it, because the IRS has to go. The 16th Amendment should be removed. Fair tax is the way to go. People, if you unleash the American economy and allow freedom, true economic freedom, you will find that we can pay off our debts and we can save our republic.
So this is a great time to bring Kevin Brady into the discussion since he is the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. So Mr. Brady, what do you think about taxation? Oh, you've been on the committee for how many years? A decade now in the chair. Oh, and you've had oversight of taxation and taxation issues for the nation, haven't you? So what do you say, Mr. Brady? Oh, you're going to do what when you're reelected for the 22nd year? Congress, the answer is you're not getting anything out of our current congressman. He has, no matter what the blah, blah, blah politicians' words are, there's nothing happening behind the scenes. There's nothing going on inside here besides manipulation and exploitation of us because he has no intention to change it. Oh, he talks the game, but remember his position of responsibility he's had for quite some time right now. He drives taxation. He is the single figure who drives taxation for the nation right now in the House of Representatives. So, of course, that's why Kevin is here. Thanks for coming, Kevin, because we get nothing out of his response, right? So, where am I on this whole issue? I started off with not so long because I love Ted Cruz. I've been a Ted Cruz rock star supporter for 11 months since I started the campaign, and 3 years, in all since he's been out there doing some wonderful things. He's been a flat tax guy for a while, but I looked at flat and fair both for quite some time. Funny, last Thursday night I said flat tax, and I went back and looked at my words and said, why did I say that? Because I'm a fair tax guy. I actually, about 3.5, 4 months ago, I came back and looked at both of them. I looked at both of them and fought through it. You'll actually see some blurred lines between fair and flat. It depends on how you define each one of them as to how much you lump in or how much you take away when you do the fair and the flat. But the fair tax is a national sales tax. For those of you who don't know this, when we say fair, it's kind of coded language. It's a national sales tax. It is a great answer to getting everyone's skin in the game in taxation. We become a great nation if we all share the tax burden. When 1/2 of our population doesn't share the tax burden, you have an ugly abuse of authority and power in taxation. When we're all in together, it is a very powerful compulsive. If the nation buys in or doesn't, because we have skin in the game. The fair tax, national sales tax, is a great answer for America.
Harry Brown was next.
Well, y'all answered the question on the question I was originally going to ask, but now I have an additional question, and this is for all three of them. All these people run for whatever office, and they promise us all this stuff, we're going to do it this way, this way, and this way, and then the rhinos turn around and do exactly what they told us they weren't going to do. How are y'all going to deal with this?
I believe Mr. McMichael, you get to start answering this one.
Yeah, so, this is the biggest question I always got when I started running this race. 3 years now, people have always asked me, Craig, you seem like a great guy, combat Marine, 3 combat tours. We know you have the courage, but everybody says that. And they go to Washington and they seem to change. What's different about you? For a long time, I struggled with that question. I had to go home, pray about it, soul search myself. And I think last year I finally came up with the solution to that problem. The problem is we elect people that actually believe they're going to go to Washington, D.C. and change it. That capital is broken. The system's broken. It's a well-oiled machine full of money that breaks people. This is why term limits are important. We rotate people in and out. What I've been trying to convince people, the only way we are ever going to save our republic is if we awaken as a nation and understand that we, the people, have the power inside this republic, and only we, the people, can save it. We have to get involved. We have to reach a point in our country where it's okay to talk about politics instead of football, where you can go into a bar and have a civil discussion with somebody you disagree with about a political issue to come with a solution like adults. We are Americans. We are the greatest nation in the world, and we're great because of the American people themselves. When we stand together, we can accomplish anything. The divide and conquer method that our government has used has torn us apart, where we literally hate each other. We have to understand that we're all on the same team in Washington, D.C. The cartel in Washington is our enemy.
So when you're looking at sorry, Craig, I didn't catch your applause. When we're looking at Rhino, the Rhino, for those of you who are not in the political speak world, is Republican in name only. When it first came out, I thought there was looking for some rhinoceros. I didn't know what the rhino thing was. An elephant, a rhino, they're both big animals with thick skin. Anyways, the Rhino, Republican in name only, is a name that's attributed to our congressman, who is not sitting next to Craig on the right-hand side. And the reason he's got that name is because he's Republican in name only. The Republican movement has become extremely conservative across the nation, which is why you see the Donald Trump and the Ted Cruz and the Marco Rubio phenomenon, and the Ben Carson and Carly Fiorina, because there is a great challenge to the establishment slash where you're not listening to your base. So what we're trying to do is be able to elect someone who is not a rhino. How is Kevin a rhino? And then how do you draw the contrast between the three of us sitting on the stage in front of you? Kevin will tell you he has a poll, the American Conservative Union, that says he is 95% conservative, and he tells you that with his $2 million campaign he's running. He's 95% conservative. And then you pull up the ACU on your iPhone, and you say, oh, what is that? And then you find out that, oh, let's see, Eric Kenner was a 93% conservative on ACU. How was he rated by Heritage? Heritage Foundation rated him an F. How are they rating Kevin Brady right now? An F. 55 is what they rate Kevin Brady from the Heritage Organization. You can get any rating you want if you just find the right team that says it, and you can blah, blah, blah. You trust the Heritage Organization because they are the most respected name in the business right now of telling you who really votes conservative over a lifetime. You throw out the rhinos, look, I'm a Republican and I have justification, I'm a conservative. Somebody told me I was. And then you look at Eric Kenner getting thrown out for the first time in American history that a majority leader was chunked from office by we the people who threw him out because he was 93% conservative according to Kevin Brady's ranking team, and he was a 53% according to Heritage. You get rid of the rhinos by looking into our hearts and souls. You look into Steve's heart and soul, mine, and Craig's, and you find genuine conservatives who love this nation and are going to vote their conscience because they love the great freedoms we have.
When I went to Austin, I did something right from the get-go. I set my face against and drew a line in the sand against what you would call the Austin cartel. Ted Cruz would call it the Washington cartel. Texas is the 12th largest economy in the world. As a result of it, it draws a lot of lobby dollars. I did not see a lot of those lobby dollars. Jonathan Stickland and myself received less lobby money than anyone of the 150 members of the Texas legislature. Why? Because we would not play ball with them, and we made it really clear right from the get-go that we would not play ball with them. If you want to go to Washington, you cannot be a double-minded person that shakes in glad hands lobbyists in one breath and then comes back and tells your constituents about how conservative you are. You've got to make, sorry to say this, but you got to make enemies of them. You really have to. You've got to stand against them right from the very beginning. Here's what they will do for you, though, if you get on their team. They will form things like the Conservative Coalition of Texas. Y'all have heard of it, haven't you? The Conservative Coalition of Montgomery County is different. It's not the same organization. The Conservative Coalition of Texas is run by and paid for by lobbyists. And what do? They give liberal Republicans A+. Isn't that convenient, right? So the motto is, you vote with us and we'll take care of you back home. We'll mail into the district, tell everybody that you got a lifetime score of 95. That's how Kevin Brady has the lifetime score of 95. Yet Heritage Alliance, Eagle Forum, which, this is the Eagle Forum group, right?
Yes.
The Eagle Forum has given them a failing grade. Conservative Review has given them an F. The way to not fall is to absolutely set your face against them right from the very beginning.
Okay, all three got to answer that one? Sometimes I lose track. I'm afraid due to limitations of time, that's the last question I'll be able to draw from the audience for this panel. I'm sure they'll be willing to stay around for a few minutes afterwards and answer other questions for you, but they each now have a 3-minute closing statement to make. And we'll start with Craig.
I love it. Love starting. Because we see what happens when I go last.
That was good.
All a liar 3 times. It was awesome.
All right, so again, thanks for coming out tonight. Obviously, you've got as much information as we can give you. We all have websites, we have Facebook, we make ourselves available. In my closing, I want to go over something that I think people have confusion with sometimes. I want to talk about our congressman and his voting record. Because as I've toured this district for the past 3 years, the #1 response I've gotten for why people support Kevin Brady is he's a really nice guy. And that upsets me a lot. As a combat Marine who had friends that died overseas, to have somebody vote in this country for a congressman because he's a really nice guy, is disappointing. It's disheartening. And a lot of people, when I start talking about his voting record, they've never heard of it. They only see the propaganda that he puts out. Kevin Brady's the reason why we have NAFTA. According to statistics, NAFTA cost Americans 10 million jobs overseas. Kevin Brady supported NSA spying on your phones. And actually, when he was asked in Huntsville, I was standing in the room, if he voted to support NSA spying, he lied and said no, he's never voted for it. Kevin Brady supported the National Defense Authorization Act. Those of you who don't know, that act allowed our U.S. government to arrest U.S. citizens and detain them indefinitely without a trial in violation of their constitutional rights. Kevin Brady voted for a fiscal cliff bill in January of 2013 that actually brought me into the race, that added $4 trillion to your national debt. And when he was asked about it on the radio, his response was, "I didn't like the bill, but I felt it was the best we could do." How sad is that? Your congressman voted for something because it's the best he could do. He voted for 2 of the omnibus bills. Debt ceilings are really interesting to me. He's voted 8 times for it and 8 times against it. And really it depends on who's in power. So you have a congressman that's playing partisan politics with your fiscal future. Either you support raising the debt ceiling or you're against raising the debt ceiling. You can't be a leaf in the wind blowing around trying to maintain power in Washington, D.C. when the future of my children and the country that I fought for depends on it. He voted for the Patriot Act, which is a clear violation of your constitutional rights, and so much so they've actually gone and reworded it a little bit. And the fair tax. Kevin Brady is one of the co-sponsors for the fair tax, and I've stood in a room and watched him personally say, his quote, "It is too bold of a tax plan to pass." If it's too bold, and you're the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, how about you actually find the courage to do the right thing and not sign as a co-sponsor, and be honest with the voters. Stop going around and lying. You do 50 town halls a year. He brags about that. It upsets me because he flies back and forth every weekend because he never moved to Washington, and then he bills you with tax money for those plane tickets. You're paying the man $175,000 a year to do a job in Washington, D.C. He should go do his job, and if he wants to fly home, let him pay. Because when I was a combat Marine and I wanted to come visit my mother, I had to pay with my measly Marine Corps salary to come home and see my family. God bless you. Thank you for coming out, and have a great night.
We got a great nation, and we still have hope. You know, this is a dangerous time for America. There is no doubt for Diane and I that we're in this race because we believe America is on a very dangerous edge of ceasing to exist as a free and wonderful people. And the answer to that is people like you who come out tonight and say, I'm going to meet those guys, and I'm going to find out which one of them's a jerk and which one of them's great, and hopefully find all 3 of us are really great and liked and good, trustworthy men that you feel confident to vote for. But something about you being here says you still have hope in America. That is wonderful because we so desperately need great American citizens who believe in the Constitution and still want to take it to the mat and say, we're going to win this thing. Before we go too far and lose it, if you read my last article just published 2 days ago, Conroe Courier and the Woodlands Villager and a whole 9 newspapers, you saw me calling for Hillary Clinton to go to jail. I'm asking for the indictment that will get her 15 years in jail. Now, we got to still have the trial, but there is a huge challenge for the American judicial system of whether you can send a Hillary Clinton or anybody named Clinton to jail no matter what they do. So if you read that one, you get a chance to look at it and read my argument. I put down the series of challenges that she should be looked at for felony convictions. So there's an anger out there. I feel a part of it. I'm in this race because I am angry and I am deeply concerned. When I put this pamphlet together, the very first thing at the very top of it was, this war against the debt has got to be won. At that time, we didn't have an ISIS threat that was nearly as large as it is right now. But the $19 trillion of debt, I think you all know we're headed to $21 trillion. At the least, we're headed to $20 trillion. It's probably going to be $21 trillion before Obama leaves office. And you all know also that that debt will be the most any single president has ever accumulated, not just in his lifetime, but all the presidents before him together have never amassed that much debt in his single administration is what he's accumulated here during his time in office. Kevin Brady has been a facilitator of that montage of danger. It's a national security threat to the nation to expend beyond our means. When we get to the level of $21 trillion of debt, we don't even know what that is anymore. That's a number too big to even imagine. All we know is our economy is stifling and stagnating, and that many people are sending the warning signal. And the Hillary Clinton, as a part of that process, I know it's easy to attack the other party and kind of raise, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm just simply mad about Hillary. I called my very first article that I published for the impeachment of Barack Obama. I think he has dead baggage that is extremely dangerous to the United States of America, and the only reason he is not run from office is because he's our first black president. I don't think that's a crime. I don't think it's a problem to be a black president. I think it's a crime to hide behind your race and then do terrible things to this nation, have no one call you out for it. Nobody does that anymore. Well, you can do it as a congressman. A Craig McMichael, a Steve Toth, or a Colonel Dean will do it. To stand there, put their fist on the table, and say, you're not going to do this. No. Any one of us as a congressman could call for articles of impeachment. All we have to do is rally a few guys to get those articles moving, so it's not just a dead call. For the right reason, and a Hillary Clinton to jail, for the right reason, you have the potential as a single congressman to raise a voice and make a difference. Currently into Congress, I would love to have your vote. I would like to make a difference in the fight for this nation in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Every 2 years, we hear this is the most important election of our lifetime, right? With $19 trillion of debt and the omnibus that was signed just a few months ago, I'm not talking about the omnibus, I'm going to take it back a couple months to the omnibus. It was a 2-year budget deal. With that much debt, we may not get another bite at the apple. It's overwhelming, the amount of debt and currency manipulation that's going on right now by the United States and all of Europe and all of Asia. It could put us into an unrecoverable spin financially. If we don't engage now, we will not leave anything to the next generation. I'm thinking about my 3 children. I hope you're thinking about your kids as well. That if we don't act, if you don't do what you can do now, we may not be able to pass anything on to the next generation. My dad's 90. He served in the Merchant Marines. And I love him. He's my hero. And I think about the fact that all the sacrifices that the greatest generation made for our generation, they defeated the Nazis, they defeated socialism, they defeated communism, they freed Western and Eastern Europe. They freed, but Eastern Europe fell to the communists again. But they did free Western Europe, and then they rebuilt it and left. They defeated the Japanese, rebuilt it and left. They rebuilt South Korea and left. And they left no debt to us. Look what we're leaving to the next generation. We're leaving 20-some-odd trillion dollars of debt and an entitlement system that will ensure more debt for them. What have the baby boomers achieved? Think about this compared to the greatest generation, other than an entitlement system. We have got to engage. We've got to engage. Each of you has something that you can bring to the table. Each of you has something that you can do to defend your nation and to protect Texas. And I just want to encourage you. There are only a few weeks left till March 1st. Get behind one of these candidates. Encourage family, encourage friends to get involved. And I as well would be honored to have your support. And Steve Toth, Lord bless you. God bless Texas. God bless America.